Good afternoon, parents, alienated parents, grandparents, children, worldwide, family, friends. Welcome to Let's Talk on Parent Alienation is Child Abuse. We have a special guest all the way from Virginia, and we have also Andy Martens all the way from the Sioux here in Ontario, Canada. I am from Hamilton. Thank you for tuning in onto Let's Talk. We have amalgamated with Andy Martens, and we are Let's Talk Real Talk today with Brittany Whitworth. Brittany has a very new and recent case here on parent alienation. She has been the alienation started in December of 2021, and she hasn't seen her children since January of 2022. So here, Brittany has the story on how she is appealing the courts today because her ex-mother-in-law has her two children, one biological and one non-biological, um, in her care, other than having the mother take care of the child for no reason at all. We're going to have Brittany tell her story, but right now I'm going to get Andy Martens to say hello to our guests and to Brittany. Andy?
We welcome all the grandparents and all the Let's Talk Real Talk fans. This is the Let's Talk portion of it. We got a double whammy coming at you guys for parental alienation, striving to be the best podcast in Canada. And our guest, as Mary mentioned, is from the great state of Virginia, but let's leave the politics of it alone. Brittany, welcome to the show. You and I talked about it earlier before the show. Process is a lot more than picking the wrong person, but that might be part of it. Let's hear your story on somebody you thought was the right person to settle down with turned out to be the reverse.
So what's interesting, more interesting with my case, this woman actually tried 10 years ago to take my children. And as I had explained to Mary earlier, come to find out, it actually, I guess, seems to be a trend in their family, as her own mother had taken her son from her previously when they were growing up. 10 years ago, she sent out false reports to CPS, who showed up at the time. And 10 years ago, the worker that came out, she realized that everything that had been sent out in these reports were bogus. And she pretty much was like, hey, we just need to fix a couple of things and I'll be on my way. And that's exactly what happened. My children were left in my care. Um, Being the person I was, I cut the grandmother out of our lives at that time. And she just kept being persistent and persistent and persistent and wanting to be in my son's life. And I felt like, he already had a father that was not being a part of his life at all, no matter how much we tried. Maybe she was, trying to actually care, and maybe she did want to be in my son's life, and that was his family. And so I tried to open that door again, thinking that I was doing the right thing. Why would I keep love from my son? Like, why would I keep family from him that wants to love him? This woman went on to testify in court for me to get custody of my son because of her son abandoning my son. And then in 2021, so my youngest daughter has a separate father than my son. And she had started babysitting for us, and some things had started to get really toxic. She was on medication where we had come home early from work before, and she was just, incapacitated. Had no idea that anybody had even walked into the unlocked door where my baby was laying. We were able to pick my daughter up, and literally, like, you could be as loud as you wanted in the house, and she had no clue that anybody was even there around the children. And then she started trying to do, one of those divides between my kids, like putting it in my son's ear, because my son was 8 years old at the time, and my daughter was just a little bit under 2. And she kept trying to get into my son's ear. Well, that's not really your sister, right? Because they had different fathers. And me and my daughter's father had discussed it, and we just felt like she was doing everything she could to create a divide in our family, and that it was being very toxic. So we cut her off from babysitting, and we stopped contact with her. At that point, she started making reports on our family business page. My fiance ran a tree care business, so she started sending out reports trying to take down his business. And that's when she called CPS into the situation. Now, she reported to CPS that we were on drugs, that I was being beat and I was covered in bruises from head to toe, that my children were being beat, that all of these drugs were being left laid out around our children. And so CPS comes out, and then we don't hear anything back from them for a couple of weeks. And I guess the grandmother decided to try again, because on the very same day she started sending out fake business reports again, CPS shows up back at the house. So this worker comes out, she talks to us, we inform her, hey, we know where these calls are coming from. And we show her, what the situation is. She signs a safety plan with us that night. Now, all of this is on police body worn camera. She signs a safety plan with us that night, says that everything is fine and well, leaves out of the house. 12 hours later, I get a phone call asking me to come meet a different social worker with my children. And when I show up, I'm informed by her and 4 cops that she's there to take my children. Okay. The police put in the report that we broke the safety plan that was signed on police body worn camera, and the department has refused to produce. They've refused to produce it in court. They've refused to produce it in state hearings. I've got emails asking to subpoena it and being denied. So the police put in that we broke a safety plan and that our children were being removed for drugs. We had never even been drug tested. And I had offered drug testing literally on the spot. When they accused us of drugs, I was like, look, I don't have anything to worry about there. There's nothing illegal that you would find in my system. I'll give you a drug test on the spot. So we get coerced by the police to sign our children into, I don't know if you know what it's called, what it is here. It's called respite care, which is normally reserved for like foster care children and things like that. If a provider feels like they need a break, that a child can go stay somewhere else for up to 21 days. The state funds for the child to go stay there, but technically you still keep your legal custody. That was the guise was, okay, the children are physically going to go stay somewhere else, but we won't be in court, and you'll still have custody. You'll still have say-so over your children. We were informed this was all the week before Christmas. We were literally 6 days away from Christmas happening. We were told that the children would come stay with my aunt on Christmas so that we would be able to see and still have Christmas with our family. So then my son, I paid for a cell phone for him. Like, he had his own cell phone and his own cell phone line. And he calls us 2 days before Christmas on video call. And we learned later that they actually took my son's phone and moved him foster homes because he called us. So then the department starts telling us that the only way that we can see the children is for the drug screen results to come back. So me wanting to see my kids, I start calling the doctor's office. Hey, are these results in? Hey, are the results in? I need the results so I can see my kids. The doctor's office refused to give me my drug testing results, to the point that I had to hire an attorney and get an attorney to make the doctor's office release these drug test results to me. So then at that point, like, we really knew that something was wrong. Like, we knew, like, if they were working that hard against us in the beginning and trying to keep paperwork from us, like, what was really going on here? So we go to court. We have, they do an emergency removal order where they submitted literally 6 pages. I mean, everything in the 6 pages that they submitted, there was a police body worn camera that disputed anything they said. Both of my children are white on the paperwork. They removed 2 black children from me. It went on to they allowed us 1 physical visit with our children at a bookstore. And now at this point, I'm already feeling like something's wrong. So I started recording everything. So as I'm recording the visit with my children, I recorded the entire visit. The very next court date, the social worker goes into the court and lies and says that I screamed at her and stormed off during this visit with my children, not realizing there was a recording. But when I testified to it in family court, two lawyers, my lawyer and the guardian ad litem, they have proof that perjury just occurred in this court. It completely went overlooked and everything just went on hearsay. So by the end of 3 court dates, they left custody with my son's grandmother and left visitation at her discretion. Now, for the first 6 months, she would allow me to get a video call with them on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And then all of a sudden, she started saying, well, your son doesn't want to talk to you. He's mad at you. He doesn't want to talk to you anymore. I don't have to force him to see you or talk to you. This is the same child that I have on recording literally saying, I wish I could come home today. I hope it's not more than a week. I hope that the longest that it is 30 days and I'm home to you. I have him literally recorded telling me, I know why they took my phone from me. They took my phone because I called you. I was allowed to call anybody else except you. So at that point, right after, towards the end of January, when everything started getting really weird, was when I found out that we had got a newly established ombudsman's office here in Virginia, because the department had never had any type of oversight. So I reached out to the ombudsman's office, who actually initiated an investigation into my case. But the investigation, it's not a quick thing. I initiated the investigation on January 26th of 2022. I didn't get the ombudsman's report handed to me until the end of July in 2022, just before my last court hearing on August 17th of 2022, where my then attorney lied and told me that I wasn't even allowed to use the ombudsman's report as evidence to prove that the department had illegally removed my children. So in the middle of all of that going, yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Okay. Oh.
In the middle of all of that going
no,
on.
Oh yeah. Hold on. Mary, did you have
I was
something?
going to ask you. Yeah, I was going to ask you. How old are your kids right now that were
right
removed
now,
from you?
My son is 9 and my daughter is 3. My son was 8 and my daughter was 21 months when they took them.
Wow. So they're just very young.
Yeah. And so at that time, once they opened that investigation, I thought, okay, well, that sits inside the governor's office. So at that point, I tried to write the governor and I tried to write the first lady, and they sent a CPS program director for the state to call me. And during our conversation, she started going on and she was telling me about how there were all these families across the Commonwealth that were fighting for their children, and that, the way Virginia's dynamics are set up between state and local departments, it leaves the state without having any type of jurisdiction to fix these problems. And she went on to say, and what they did to you has been a common practice for as long as I can remember. And that was how I found out what shadow foster care was, because I had never heard that term before. And she goes on to tell me that, some people have even coined this as sort of a shadow foster care. It's where your kids have been taken by the system and they're semi in the system, but there's no checking in on the children by the department. There's no services for the family to get their children back. I think it was around January 24th of 2022, I had written the department and I was like, okay, we've been to court. I have my parental rights. I need to know what's going to be set up for me to be able to see my children. What type of case plan is there going to be? Is there going to be a reunification plan, something for me to get my children back? And they flat out wrote me back and said, oh, we transferred custody. We don't have to work with you. We don't have to offer you any services. We don't make reunification plans. And if you want to see your kids, it's left up to the people that have your children.
I went through that myself with my own 3 teenagers. They fell into the same category. The judge left everything up to them. They were 15, 17, and 18. The 18 was actually excluded. So he became the father's right hand aide to keep me away from his sisters, but yet he was extremely violent to his sisters. So he was taking it out on me. You could tell because one of the sisters was writing all over Facebook how she wanted to kill her brother. And when I started getting help for them by getting some reunification, I got denied by everybody. But my story happened 18 years ago. But my ex-husband's happens 63 years ago this year. He has never seen his own father. And when we found him at 25, he was murdered 2 months before we were going to visit him in California. So he never got to have a real father. So this is a generational curse that your children are going through, all these other people's children that are going through them. It's very rare you see an alienated child today without the background history of an alienating parent somewhere along that line who uses the grudge, because every child will hear, oh, I'm not talking to your uncle, or I'm not talking to your aunt, because they did this and this as they're growing up. They hear that. So now the kids have grown to hear that kind of stuff, and they do it to the next generation.
Oh, yeah,
It's such a sad. It's sad that their kids are being taken away to give to a foster parent when that parent was doing everything they could to keep that loving child lovable. And now they're passed on to like you said, the shadow fostering, because shadow fosters in Ontario, well, not Ontario, but in BC right now are getting $1,500 a month to take your child and raise them, and under 11, and after 12 they get almost $1,700. So what is this world falling into? Taking a loving parent away to give to a foster child, a foster parent? Who knows who these foster parents are?
yeah,
These foster parents can be abusers, pedophiles. They could be anybody. And we can't fight for them. There was no one to help me 18 years ago. All I heard was, your kids don't want to see you. Your kids don't want. Mistake by making my children write fake affidavits. I've been fighting that for 18 years. And then 18 years later, the story changed. Like you said, I was accused of being a drug addict, an alcoholic. I did crack cocaine. I offered to go do blood work. I never drank in my life in front of my children even. I would have one for New Year's or whatever, but I became a crackhead alcoholic overnight. And when I went to do blood work, they refused to take it. And I'm thinking, well, wait a minute here. You're accusing me of being a drug addict and alcoholic, yet you won't take blood work? So this is what they've done to us. They've manipulated the system to the extreme to protect an alienator. So it's really bad. Andy, do you have any? Sorry.
I was going to say, it was one of the things that kills me in my case, though, is like, you hear one of the cops during the removal of my children speak about how cute my daughter is, and the social worker, as she takes them, literally goes, yeah, you can tell they're very obviously well loved.
Right.
Okay, I'm not sure what that means, Patrick, but
yeah, I don't know either. I've never heard it that way before.
Yeah, me neither. That's a pretty shitty carrot.
Well, yeah, let's.
But yeah, I think I understand what you're going through too, Patrick, because what Brittany here is suffering is like brand new. So
we're getting some freezing
having
going
your
on.
kids
Yeah.
removed. What is that flight or fight mode we go into, and we don't know whether our heads are spinning. Are we living a nightmare? It happens so quickly, right?
Mary, you're frozen.
I'm frozen.
You are.
We can hear you, but you're frozen.
Oh, okay. But it's so what do you comment on that, Brittany? How they pull the rug out from underneath you and you just
And
go on the magic carpet ride.
and then they can't even try to say that they're just trying to accuse me of being abusive or neglectful to my children, because they instantly also alienated my daughter. My oldest daughter is 18 and she has not spoken to her siblings since before they were taken.
Right.
The moment that she got custody, she literally blocked anyone that was related to me from being able to have any communication with my children.
Sad.
But Brittany, it looks as though you've got a few challenges on many fronts. Let's talk about the guys you picked. You must have seen something positive before they turned out to be the wrong guys.
So with Tylee's father, because me and my daughter's father are actually still together. We've been fighting this alongside each other together, trying to get our children back. When I met him, he actually generally came off as the nice guy. At that point in time, it was like most of the guys you met, they were just trying to sleep with you, or they were mainly he was willing to talk and to wait and to hang out. And really, that was kind of what I felt for in him, was he generally seemed like the nice guy. And then as time went on, I started realizing that he was constantly lying about everything. It didn't matter what it was. You could ask this man a question and he was constantly lying about it. And when we split up, I never had dealt with somebody not wanting to be a part of their children's life. We begged this man, look, our only stipulation is until we get legal custody done and set up, we don't want my son leaving the state. We want something set up so that, we're both protected, but my son's going to stay in the state that we live. You're welcome to come here and come visit him. We'll even supply you a place to stay to see him, free, so you don't have to pay for it. And he completely turned his back on our son. And so I was really shocked. I mean, this man went as far as trying to sell me his parental rights for $600. And then he moved on to another woman and had another child. And at that time I was being informed that, and I'm like, okay, well, what about our son? What about our son and him not having a father in his life? Oh, we're not even allowed to mention your son's name. He acts like your son doesn't exist.
That's right. Well, Mary, this is yet another example of a disposable society that we've built over the last 15 to 20 years.
60. It's been progressive.
Yeah, no, I mean, yes, in your case, but
in my
not
case,
getting
yes.
better, it's getting worse.
That's right, because my kids literally after 16 years being alienated from them brought me to trial saying I wanted nothing to do with them now. They had me falsely arrested with the father 18 years ago, this July 18th, 2005, to never see them again. I fought and fought and fought. And Brittany and I were talking about it backstage, how we both were deleted on Facebook. I had 11 years, 1 month, 1 day of Facebook footage on my hundreds and thousands and followers and people on parent alienation. And, I did my brother who got murdered. I did appeals. I had so much information on my Facebook page that I got deleted. Well, Brittany tells me after 12 years, she was deleted as well, doing what, she did on her own Facebook page. So what we are falling into now, they've been trying to silence us because this is a multi-billion-dollar industry. Actually, I think we are now in the trillions. It was $55 billion a year, I think 2 years ago. So now that alienation has gotten so big that the courts are gobbling up as many as they can before they get shut down, because we are bringing awareness to the world. We are using our platforms to help people, to educate doctors, lawyers, judges on what's happening to our kids. Today's my son's 36th birthday, and I don't even get to see him again. It was 18 years ago next week. A week after his birthday, I was falsely arrested, never to see him again. And, I've contacted the Navy, only to find out that the mistress slandered me to the Navy, and they won't even let me talk to my boy. So I'm sending out special requests to the Royal Canadian Navy today. Wish my son a happy birthday for me, because, that's wrong. When I worked for the military police as a dispatch, I help families come together. When parents used to call me overseas to say, I haven't seen my son, I don't know where he is, can you help me find him? And there they are. And I get them, the information, get them to communicate with their families. And here I am. My ex-husband, a soldier, did the same thing. And these soldiers are brainwashed to keep away from the families, or to keep the family away from outsiders, so that they could all be sucked in together into these cults. So this is what I have noticed over the 46 years that I've been with my abuser. Whether I'm divorced 16 years from him now, it's not like I'm divorced, because this is how I lived for 27 years with him. He was never home. So right now I feel like he just hasn't come home yet. But one day he's going to come knocking on my door, and he's probably going to put the loaded gun to my head, because this is what I had to deal with, him putting guns to my head. I had other soldiers put guns to my back. I'm tough as nails, but I will fight for my kids as much as I can to help other kids, because this is wrong. The abuse, the domestic violence in families that are getting swept under the carpet and stuff is really bad. And this is how kids fall into the same situation. You ask, why didn't I leave? Well, he left. He was gone 6 to 12 months. Where am I going to go? Am I going to abandon my home? No, I stayed there, but he had a key. So he came home to visit the kids, as if we were co-parenting. That was the kind of lifestyle my kids had. So when I wanted to see my kids, 50-50 equal shared parenting, the judge literally said he didn't want to uproot my 15, 17, and 18-year-old. And I'm thinking, are you nuts? These kids grew up in the military. They were never home in one spot for more than 4 years. And you don't want my kids to come and see me 5 blocks down the street? Like, really? So they pushed and pushed and pushed for me to keep bringing them back to court. But once they turned 18, I was shit out of luck. Just like that carrot. I got the shit end of the carrot, just like Patrick did. And even the judge said, sorry, ma'am, you got treated like the man. And I turned around, I looked at him, I said, what's that supposed to mean? He's a pussy?
So it's funny that you said that, because one of the things that I say, especially about the way the court structure here is in America, is I keep trying to remind people, because we're such a divided, even though we're all experiencing the alienation of our kids on different levels, there's still such a divide between people. And that's why I always point out to people, if you really want to know where somebody's standing in family court, listen to what they say. Because if you have a mother that's telling you that it doesn't matter that she was a mother, her children were still ripped from her and given to, an abusive father, or this, that, and the other, or vice versa. You have a father saying, oh, it doesn't matter, the courts always hand the child to the mother. You can pretty much tell that it was like divorce courts or some type of custody mediation that went on in the family court. And then when you find those parents that are like, it doesn't matter if you're the mother or the father, they're going to go after whoever it is they're going to go after to create that revenue off of these children. You start realizing that they were dealing with an agency in our country, and they really got to see the sides of the courts, that they don't care which parent it is. They care which one it's bringing money in from.
That's right. Because they know someone's going to come in and keep fighting for that child.
Yep.
And it's usually the loving parent that will do everything we can. And I did. So then when the kids turned around and said I wanted nothing to do with them, and I had thousands of messages to them. I love you, come see me play here, because I embellished in my life. I was already kicked to the curb. I went to prison. I was in a wheelchair. I went to a walker, to a cane. And after 19 years, I started walking, but it was almost like taboo. So they took me to court to saying to the judge, look, she's doing this, she's doing that, she's playing music. Like, who cares what I'm doing? Why are you bitching about it? You should be happy that, I went from a very injured, I had multiple car accidents. So I went from a very injured mom, disabled I was half paralyzed down from the waist down, from the 8 car accidents. So these kids condemn me for being disabled. And then all of a sudden I get condemned because I'm living my life. I mean, they're never happy. So what happens to our children? They take on the abuser's role to punish us, because the abuser is already known as they want to be known as the good parents. So they don't say anything. They let the kids say it all, because they're telling the kids all this as the kids are growing up with the parent. It doesn't happen overnight. It starts from the time the kids are born, that they are conditioned. Oh, look, mommy's on the couch, lazy butt,
And
or look at mommy, she's eating too many candies. Look at her fat butt. So the kids develop all that, and then they think it's funny, and they get to talk like that disrespectfully. Sorry.
That was crazy to me too, though, because like I didn't even know that a world like that existed. I was raised by a single father. My parents split up when I was 6 months old. My mother pretty much took the drugs and alcohol path and didn't look back. But one thing that my father and my father's family never did, they never talked down about my mom when I was a child. I never heard them, going on, even when they probably should have. I mean, she wasn't even trying to be a part of my life. My father's family still made it a point to keep me in whatever family of my mother's side's lives that they could. My grandmother would write my great-grandmother on my mother's side, just to keep in touch. They would take me to go see my mother's mother because she was still trying to be a part of my life. My father waited until I was old enough to form my own opinion about what was going on with their separation and situation in my life. And I didn't realize, so it was a new world to me, realizing that parents really inflict that on their kids about other parents. You're supposed to want the parents to be in your child. I mean, unless they're absolutely 100% abusive and toxic, and there is a legitimate reason, you should want your child to have both parents and to have that love in their life. It was a very hard concept for me to figure out.
Yeah, when we traveled around the world, so every time we came into the city, into Hamilton, our parents both lived 2 miles apart. We saw one, we saw the other. My kids were raised. I have half a day with one, and the rest of the afternoon with the other. It was always, for years, for 18 years I did that. I flew in from Germany. I made sure I stayed with both parents. They lived 2 miles apart. Soon as I get falsely arrested, my ex-mother-in-law refused to take the phone call. She refused to open the door. She refused to let me have my kids. She refused my kids to go see my mom, who hasn't seen them either for 18 years. She lives still 2 miles from my mother.
Because they're afraid they'll hear the truth from anybody else.
Pardon?
They're afraid they'll hear the truth from anybody else.
Well, that's it. But my kids, after the judge allowed the father to keep the kids, he couldn't raise them. What did he do? He gave them to his mother. They were 17, 18, and 19, going to university. I built a house after I got divorced, my first home by myself, 3 bedrooms for my children to come into to go to the university that they were going in. No, they're staying with the grandparents. What was wrong? Everything that I did right. And this is what we are all doing. And this is what's hurting us parents, that we are doing it right. And we're still being trashed. Yeah. And that hurts, because we're giving them every opportunity to come back and be healthy, because they're not going to be healthy to their next partner. They're not going to be healthy to their own children. I mean, they've already abused their mother or their father or their grandparents.
It's
That,
keeping the cycle going is what it's doing.
yeah, so they're stuck in this cult. And Sam Vaknin literally did a 6-minute, 7-minute video. It's on my Parent Alienation page and my public page. But I urge everyone to go see him on the video. It's on YouTube, Sam Vaknin. Wow, what was the video called? It was about narcissistic abuse, how they suck you into a cult. And if you can, stay away from them. Get out of it as much as you can. Educate yourself. Help the lawyer or whoever you're dealing with to recognize that these alienators are out to kill.
What
They
would you
are out
like
to
a cult,
destroy
Mary?
you.
It's almost like Jimmy Jones in 1978, if you remember Guyana, where they had
Yes.
church group from California were suckered into going down to Guyana, and
The Kool-Aid.
yeah,
Yeah. Well, didn't Patty Hearst fall into that too?
with the Liberation Army, yeah, in some ways, that's right. And
The
Patty Hearst was from a very well-to-do family as well.
and many
And
of our children are too.
and
You
and
know,
that
it's strong money that takes our children.
and that's another thing I try to tell people. Like this stuff, it sees, it is not blind to any. It doesn't matter your race, your gender, your nationality, your religion, whether you have money or you don't have money, you can be affected.
That's right. It's everybody. There's even transgender. It's everybody. It's whoever goes into divorce court. Stay out of divorce court.
And
As
any type
I
of
urge you. I mean,
it's
I literally stopped divorce court and said to my ex-husband, let's stop this. And he says, okay, we'll go to marriage counseling. So I dropped it, only to get sucked in. The wool got pulled over my eyes, that he used the fact that now he gets the upper hand and gets to go to court. So this is how he gained access to my kids, by having me falsely arrested. So that is huge in these court systems. And there's a seminar coming up in September of 2023 for false allegations for people that have been in jail for any time, because we know what it's like to lose everything after we go to prison. Once you're there, you lose your home, your children, your assets. You lose everything,
and
even your dignity, your clothes on your back. My kids, once I was falsely arrested, they went through my clothes, tore up stuff, threw them in bags so I would get it. But yet they found cocaine in my pockets, so coincidentally, after I was arrested. But nobody ever found anything beforehand. So, things like this, they plant seeds to have us destroyed. And I urge parents out there, man, mom, dad, grandparents, be careful, because they're getting worse. Andy knows. Right, Andy?
Well, yeah, I mean, I saw my family wasn't that way, but it was dysfunctional in a lot of ways. And my wife's sisters, the kids were alienated by the youngest brother. So it can hit anywhere, really, Brittany. It doesn't matter where, but
yep.
it'll come around the corner and boom.
Yeah.
I don't disagree. And I mean, like she was saying, I'm sure y'all have probably heard about the Take Care of Maya movie that came out.
I watched it.
Yeah, so then you even heard them at the end of the movie, the people that were speaking. The guy, he did 15 years in prison, and then the other guy says, my dad did 26. He's been in prison for 26 years. Like the levels that they'll go to is almost unbelievable, and that's what it creates, a stigma, because people, they don't, unless it's happening to you, it's hard to believe. It's like there's no way that happened. Yeah, it really did.
Yeah. I was facing a 30-year sentence. 30 years in a wheelchair. That's how bad it was. My ex-husband, the coward he is, had no business doing that. I mean, he said I uttered a death threat, but all I said, and now I could speak freely. And if he don't like it, well, that's too bad for him, because I know he didn't like it the first time. He didn't want our children to know. I never told my children about their biological grandfather who got murdered. But I did tell my ex-husband the only difference. I said, your mother was a smart one for leaving him, but the only difference between you and your father, your biological father, is that he's 6 feet under the grave. Next thing I know, he's running out the door, and he accused me of uttering a death threat. And I'm thinking, well, if that's a death threat to you, that's your problem. But, they don't like to be put down. And when the truth is the truth, they get really scary and dangerous. And it's evidence that his mother damaged two fathers for him. After 14 years, she remarried. Another man, first stepfather for him, first male figure in his life other than his uncle, for 14 years. He recently died in 2018, but he was held against his right to leave the home because he was threatened that if he left, he would never see his daughter, who was 11 years younger than my ex-husband, his stepsister, well, half sister. But the father was told that he had to stay with his mother, the ex's mother. And he died of illnesses because he was in a relationship that killed him, like made him sicker because he couldn't get out. He was 40 something years old when he got married. He was a single man living his life and falls in love with a narcissist. And this woman destroyed two men. Literally, they're both under 6 feet under right now. And, men or women, they will destroy the opposite sex and their children because they don't have any communication. He hated her because she ruined his single life as a child, because she came 11, 12 years later,
and
raised all by himself. So we have to know the history of the person that we are dealing with, dating or falling in love with. We should know where they come from. And if they have an issue with one parent, they're going to have an issue with you next. They're not going to be that knight in shining armor or that Cinderella. That Cinderella will turn into Godzilla, and that knight in shining armor will turn into to the villain, right? So
like Freddy Krueger in the movie,
Krueger.
horror
Freddy
movie.
Krueger,
Yeah.
Nightmare on the courts. Nightmare on Elm Street. It is horrible, and it's the truth. We all have nightmares of us dealing with a living death, and that's what it's like when they take your children. I'm sure Brittany can say the same thing. When you don't have your kids in your life and you know they're alive, but you can't go get them, it's like letting someone kidnap them. And
Mary, I gotta go, Mary, and we'll see you on Thursday or Sunday, one of those 2 days.
Okay. I think it will be Sunday, Andy, because I have some appointments. I just had to reschedule.
Oh, you've got to deal with some stuff. That's right.
Yeah.
Okay. Nice meeting you, Brittany. I got to run.
Nice
we'll see you Sunday. Well. Take care.
Thank you, Andy. So it's just you and me now, kiddo. So where are you going now? What's your next steps, Brittany?
So right now, I'm still trying to get some motions filed in court, and I'm waiting to see what the state level appeal does. The hard part is I feel like I'm basically trying to navigate a legal system on my own, because any help that has been appointed to me hasn't been a help.
Right.
I literally have like a stack full of evidence. And
so you're pro se?
Yeah, but a judge has never seen any of it.
No, they don't. They don't look at it. Make sure they do now.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely been trying to work on that. It's just scary, because there's so many different sides to it, and it's like, the courts that are supposed to be helping the children and the family stay together are tearing them apart more and causing more damage than they could ever realize.
Right. They're divorcing children from a loving parent.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's crazy. Like I said, I mean, it's completely like if you have somebody that like straight up physically was abusing and neglecting a child and you can 100% prove that, I understand that a little bit differently than you have a
Yes.
parent that loves their child and they want to be there for their child and they want to support their child. If you're keeping that parent out of their life, you're the one abusing the child.
That's right. It's horrible what they do.
It really is. And I mean, and you know, I tell people all the time, you know, when I find parents that are a little bit earlier on than I am, I said, you know, I know this sucks. I said, but you're going to find both comfort and sorrow in knowing that you're not the only one.
Right. Oh, we seem to freeze there for a minute. So now that you can go after your appeal, is there a restriction, a restraining order or anything that you can't go see your kids?
It
Are
was
you
just
going to be
left, it was left at her discretion.
at the grandparent?
Yeah.
The grandparent.
Yeah. So all of the keeping me away from the children at this point has been placed on her.
It's her. So now you can go and fight and for child abuse.
So I've been trying to work on that, but you know, there's a lot of complicitness in our states that really don't do anything. You know, they'll tell you, oh, well, we don't handle custody or we don't handle these type of situations. Only the courts can handle this. They can flat out be committing a crime in the middle of it. But as soon as they hear that it's anything custody involved, they want no relation to it.
Mm-hmm. Because that's going to draw attention.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that's what happened in my trial. After 18 years, it drew attention to alienation, and that's where the judge started recognizing things and then started denying my counselor to the right to us bringing it up in the trial. She chose the witnesses, she chose the dates, the time, ended the trial. So all that right there was illegal because she had no business setting up witnesses, and I begged her not to use my children. They were adults. They had nothing to do with me. They wanted nothing to do with me. So why would they come on and accuse me of child abuse? And then, so I had criminal court, family court, and civil court all in one trial.
So here where I am, family court is still considered civil court.
Mm-hmm.
It's one and the same, which is why, so like in a normal criminal court here, hearsay doesn't count as evidence. But in a court here, you only have to convince a judge that 48% of what you're saying is true.
In family court, yes. It's the only court that allows lies and hearsay. And this is why they get away with it.
And that doesn't make sense, because if fighting for your freedom to not go to jail is considered, you know, a civil liberty that is supposed to be protected by due process, having your children taken from you is pretty much the same as a death sentence. How is it not at the same standard?
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. It's like having someone just come and steal your kid and you'll never see them again.
That's exactly what it feels like.
And you know they're out there, but who are they with? But we know who they're with, and they're the abusers. They are the ones that hurt the children to convince them all their lives that they are the powerful one, that if you do this, I will spank you. If you do this, I will insult you. If you do this, you're going to have your dinner served with milk in the morning if you don't eat your dinner. I mean, stuff like that. They were already coached. They were already going through. And no one would listen when, you know, you go to get help. My son had the biggest hand mark across his 6-year-old little body that was so red and wilted. When I took him to the doctor was so terrified to call the military police on my ex because he saw the hand. It was like the biggest hands I've ever seen, and he got away with it.
Yeah, I showed them pictures of this woman admitting to smacking my son in the mouth with a spatula and beating him with a spatula. And before we had pulled away from that situation, she would tell me about something that my son had did wrong, and I would tell her, okay, well, when I get off work, he'll probably end up being grounded. Well, I'm just gonna keep beating his ass, is the response that I would get. Like, and you're sitting here telling me that they tried to say that my situation was inadequate supervision, but you're going to place my children in the home of somebody that is openly beating my children.
Right.
I can't even make that make sense.
Well, that's just it. The judge saw that, he called my ex-husband a conniving, scheming, manipulative liar and had no doubt in his mind he set me up. But he gets the house and kids and don't pay support until the house sells. And I got a phone call a day to my kids, but yet he changed the number. My son would always answer the phone and go tell me to F off or whatever. He was 18. He wouldn't let me talk to the girls. And it got to the point where there was no more phone. They must have had their cell phones. I emailed, sent all kinds of, I sent gifts to them at Christmas, flowers for their birthdays. And now they're saying they never got anything, that I'm a liar. One even wrote me a couple months ago to say I will never get to see my grandchildren and that she will tell her children that I was an abusive grandmother and how abusive I was to them as a mother, and I will never be a grandmother. And I'm thinking, you're already saying what your father said to me all my life before you guys were born. And so she remembers, she heard it because the father would go around every time the kids would have their hands up, pick me up, daddy. He'd go say, go see your mother. She's the one that wanted you. All their little lies. Or he'd say, I hate babies when I asked him to go change one of them or whatever. And, this is the kind of verbal abuse that the kids grew up with. So they craved his attention because he was always gone with the military. I mean, the good thing about military that took him away from me. And, but I didn't want them to take the father away from the kids. So when he came back on maneuvers, right away, he comes home, gets to spend the one day, the kids hated him. Second day, they kind of shied up to him. It was like reunification every time he came back. Third day, they finally started laughing because he would convince them to hit mommy, spit at mommy to make them laugh, then to go back to him. By the fourth day, he didn't care about them, and that's when the abuse started. So it was a cycle, over and over. And this is what I saw from the moment we got married. And it's like, oh my God, what am I dealing with here? And, I was grateful that the Lord took him away from me, but not from my kids. And I should have been, happy that the kids were away, but I saw how sad they were for their father, so I could never shut them out. And what's he do? He puts me in prison so I could never come back. Now, this is psychologically the most devastating thing.
Psychological warfare is what it is.
It's what?
It's psychological warfare is what it is.
It is. And this is what I'm dealing with for 46 years, going on 47 now. And, he's there. He's aiming to kill me. He does not want me to speak about my story. And many people don't either, because a lot of people fall into the same category as abusers. They want their spouses dead. And because I speak out, there's a lot of people that want to silence me. And I know through the military and my whole life, if I saw someone get hurt, I would protect them. I would say to the person hurting them, like, hey, what are you doing? Stop. And I was always the referee because my ex-husband was the bully in high school. So I had to step in the middle of him hurting someone, one of my friends, because they were talking to me. This is why I didn't want to date him. I didn't want anything to do with him, but it turned out that there was no way of getting away.
I think
He
you
stalked me for 2 years. He joined the army saying he'd be a better man. It made him worse because he got big-headed. The army protected him. He used to say, oh, the army's going to protect me over you, stuff like that. So we're all coerced in different ways. And seeing the civilian side of the military, it's no different, only they had a uniform and they had their stripes or whatever. They thought they were more powerful, but really they weren't. They were just no different than anyone on civilian street that got alienated from their child. So, worldwide, this is a serious pandemic.
It really is.
It really is. And I mean, all the way to Virginia, we go to the Bahamas, we go to Africa, we went to Hungary, we went to Spain, we went all over the world. And everybody's saying the same thing. Italy has no rights to grandparents now. They passed a law just a couple months ago that grandparents have no rights to see their grandchildren. What is that? Without grandparents, there's no love. It's the grandparents that have the love. But in your case, the grandparents has the hate on for you.
Yeah.
So we are now.
And I try to explain that to people too, because none of these cases are black and white, cut and dry. My situation isn't going to be the same as another family that has a grandparent that's willing to fight for them to keep their children, in the family and around the family. The same way that you have people that will coin a term and then use it to get their children and they are the abuser. It doesn't make it the same across the board for everybody else. Like no one situation is the same. Like I tell people, there's grandmothers that I talk to trying to help, and it's like, well, how can you feel that way when you've got a grandmother attacking you in your case? Well, because that's my case. That's not your case. If the grandmother in your case is loving and should be there and is trying to help you, you should welcome that.
That's right. Like my ex-mother-in-law, she's the one that's alienating my kids, allowing the son to badmouth me, knowing that I was a good mother, because she used to always say, what a good mom you are. How do you handle them all by yourself? Don't you miss him? And I'd say, how do I miss a monster? Because she called his father a monster all his little life. So when I said, how do you miss a monster? That clued into her that, you know what, her son's a monster like his real father. And I'm dealing with the same abuse, and yet she alienates me instead of helping me.
Same thing in my situation. I literally have copies of this woman talking about how well taken care of my son is, how happy he was. And then as soon as she saw the opportunity to take them, I'm a bad mother, abusive, neglectful, drug addict, all of this other crazy stuff.
They run with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so sad. Well, Brittany, we're almost up to the hour. Can you give us your last final comment?
I mean, I know it seems sometimes like a losing battle, but my last final comment is at least never stop trying, because maybe one day, even after all the brainwashing and the alienation, your children might at least look and see that you were fighting all the way through trying to be in their lives.
Thank you for that. Thank you. And like I always say to all alienated parents, grandparents, and children out there, never give up on each other. The only parent you have is the one you're alienated from due to another alienating parent who has issues and really doesn't care whether you suffer or not. As long as they suffer and feel that rise that they get out of watching someone else suffer, it's a psychological warfare for them as well in their own heads. Their fantasy is evil. It's destructive, and they don't care whether they destroy the alienated children, because I'm an alienated daughter for 40 years. My ex-mother-in-law, my ex stepmother did the same thing to my father. She took him away from me, and I only got to see him a handful of times over the years, fighting to see him. Still hurts.
It doesn't go away.
But she was the same. Anything to keep me away, hurting me, saying I'm bad. I'm no good for my father, and all these bad things. And I'm thinking, why would you say that to me? But it was because the money was left to her and to her 3 kids. And unfortunately, one of her daughters died as I found my father. They say karma's a bitch, and I hate to say that children are being used as pawns till they die, but that's what they do. So my stepmother kept me from my father, and my ex-husband had contact with her. So they all alienated me from everybody in my family, for my kids, the cousins, the aunts, the uncles, grandparents. So, but anyways, Brittany, thank you for coming on.
And thank you for having me.
I'm anxious to hear about your appeal. If you can come back and join us to let us know how your appeal went, that would be great.
Will.
And we could do another part. So I'd like to thank everybody out there for joining us today on Let's Talk, Real Talk with Andy Martens as well, and Brittany Whitworth, all the way from Virginia. You have a pleasant day, and thank you for coming on, Brittany.
You as well.
Stay there.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Thank you for joining us. And
Bye.
we are going to end this podcast. Bye.